All right, what the heckers? Today we're going to be working with leather. I had a couple of ideas for projects, so I had to spend some time kind of teaching myself to tool leather, and I find that I get a passable result fairly quickly. So this is one of those things where practice makes perfect, and after probably decades of doing it, it would look very different than what it looks like now. However, I do find that it's easy to get started and a little bit addictive. So these are some of my first projects, a keychain and this little nameplate, which you will find in a later project. But then what we're going to do today is we're going to make a luggage tag for two reasons. Number one, I really hate trying to figure out which bag is mine on the carousel. But also, more importantly, is that it's a nice large size so that we can make it really easy to see what I'm doing on camera. So let's talk about what you need. Okay, so before we can start making things with leather, let's talk about the things that we're going to need in order to get the project done. Obviously, the first thing you're going to need is leather. Now, a good place to buy sheets of leather like this are going to be craft stores. If you have a Tandy Leather nearby, I strongly recommend it because they were really, really, really helpful when I walked in and said, here's my idea for a project. What do I need? And they were very encouraging of me to just mess around and not get too serious about it at the beginning so that I could kind of learn my way. So leathers like this isn't expensive, 15 bucks maybe, for a much larger sheet. I've obviously been working with this for a while. So you're going to need leather, easy enough. Your thickness, all of that is just going to be based on your project because today we're making a luggage tag. I wanted it to be a little bit thicker. And for my other projects, I've been using the same leather. This is a project that you will see in an upcoming video, so I'm not going to say anything about that. But then this keychain, you can see it's just about the right thickness for a keychain, so it feels really good. So this actually worked out very well. Next thing you're going to need is a way to cut the leather. So I'm going to cheat a little bit, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But best thing you can use here, for at least in my experience, is just a sharp knife. Now, there are specifically made knives called swivel knives for working with leather. I do have one of those. I haven't used it yet. I don't know how to use it. So that's going to be for a later video. Because as I said, this is only really my third time working with leather. The other two have been in like the last week. So I'm still trying to figure out exactly what all I need and how to do it, what I want to do to get to the desired result. You're going to need a leather tooling kit. So this one I bought at Tandy. It was probably, I don't know, $50. You can get them much cheaper on Amazon, though I can't swear to the quality. You can also find them at your Michaels and your Joann's, places like that also sell leather. And really the most important tools that we're going to be using today are going to be a beveler. So you can see it's just a beveled edge. It's got a little bit of texture there, but we're going to be using the beveler. And then this texture tool, it looks like a little teardrop with that same kind of crosshatch texture on it. Now, again, you can go crazy with these tools. If you go to any store that sells them, you'll see, especially Tandy Leather, just so many different tools of different shapes and sizes. You can get ones that are in the shape of Texas. You can get ones that are, bigger, smaller, different type of filigree. So you can really go crazy with this. So what I'm doing is just seeing what I can do with the basic set. Next, you're going to need a burnishing tool. And that's just for cleaning up the edges. These are really inexpensive, and we'll show you how to use that. You're going to need some leather dye. This is Saddle Tan. The dye in the bottle always looks much, much darker, and you'll see that later on. The dye in the bottle always looks much, much darker, so don't worry when you put it on, but always, you probably want to use a scrap piece of leather before you put it on your finished product just to make sure you like the end result. These little daubers are for applying the dye. And then finally, you're going to need a mallet. And I'm using an anvil just because I think it's funny, because it looks like something Wile E. Coyote would drop. But just something to weigh down the leather as you're working on it. You can also just blue tape it to the mat if you need to do that, to your surface. And then make sure you're working on a hard surface. I'm using a self-healing mat. That's not ideal because there's a lot of give because it's soft. I would do better to be working on like a more hard surface. I just don't have something to work on that would be hard enough that I don't have to worry about damaging. But when you talk to people that work with a lot of leather, they work with marble surfaces, little marble tablets in order to work on to give them that nice hard surface. So first things first, let's get our design going. First thing you need to do is score the design into the leather. So here's where I said I'm cheating a little bit. Instead of using a knife, I'm actually using my vinyl cutter in order to score the leather and put in my design. Now, you can do that with just a sharp knife and any template you'd like to use. I just happen to use my vinyl cutter because it was at hand. And so here we're just scoring the leather, not going all the way through it, just enough so that you have a design cut so that you can then tool from that design. So now I want to cut out that key tag sort of shape. So we're just going to use a sharp utility knife in order to get that cut out. Before the tooling can begin, we just need to get the surface damp. It just makes the tool work a lot easier. It gives you a lot more freedom when it comes to what you do with the tools as you're doing the tooling. So we're going to start with the beveler. And we're just going to go and do an initial outline of our design on that damp leather. So it may be easier for you to run it across the design first to give yourself a little bit of a line to follow, but I do find that you can just go after it with the beveler, and you're just going to kind of start tapping in the beveler and outlining the design that you have. If you're doing it correctly and holding the beveler not too tight, it should kind of walk itself across the line of the design. So here we're just tracing the outside of the design, taking our time. It may take a couple of passes to get a good, make it look good, but you can see here we have very defined edges. Now, since I want a really simple design here, I'm just going to texture the inside of the letters. What that's going to do is kind of recess the letters even more, but it's going to give it that kind of dimpled texture that will kind of make it pop a little bit more. So really what's going on here is same thing. Hold the tool lightly and just kind of start tapping on it. And as you're tapping on it, the tool will kind of walk itself around. Now you want to make sure you guide it, but you can see that just on the first pass, we're already starting to get some texture. Now this part particularly will take several passes because you're trying to get a uniform texture across the piece. But really what this is just doing is going to make that definition on those letters really stand out. And there we go. After a couple of passes and just doing some more work, it's hard to know when to stop, to be honest. But this is, only my third attempt at leatherworking, and you can see that just after, I don't know, about an hour and a half's worth of work, you can get a passable result that looks like it needs to for what my project is today. You can keep going. Different tools are going to give you different impressions. This is just working with the tools that I had. I would really like to take one of these projects now back to Tandy and have them tell me what other tools I could be using to get better texture, more even texture. But overall, I'm really happy with how this looks. So next step is going to be burnishing the edges before we go to dye. So this is the burnisher, and you see how you can see the raw edge of the leather. What this is going to do, we just rub it along here, and you can see it smooths out that edge and makes it finishes it off. So this is just one of those things where you just want it to be a little bit damp, and you just go around the edges and create a smooth finish. But you'll see like some of these raw edges from when it was cut will actually start to clean up themselves just by doing the burnishing, because it gets kind of that raw frayed bit and cleans it up. So let me do some more burnishing and we will get ready to dye. Now with the edges burnished, it's time to dye. Not that kind of dye. So what we're going to be using here, first thing you want to do is make sure it's clean and still a little damp from cleaning it. You want to get those oils from your hands off of it. And then what we're going to use is this saddle tan dye. So it's going to make it kind of a light color. When you put it on, it's going to look really dark. It takes a while for it to dry and assume its actual color. So don't freak out when you see that it's not quite the color that you thought it was going to be. So you're going to take one of these little cotton daubers or wool daubers, a dauber of some sort. And then you're just going to brush it on. And you'll see that capillary action is going to take it into all of the crevices. Now, you can do more than one coat of dye if you want. I have found with the other ones that I did that one coat was enough. Don't forget to get the edges. And there we go. Like I said, this is much darker than what it's going to dry to. This is the exact same dye, right? So you can tell that there's definitely, once it seeps in and once the leather dries from both the dye and the dampness that you put on to begin with, there's going to be a distinct color change. So we're just going to leave that to dry. And then we'll come back and see what we've got to finish out the project. Okay, so it's still a little damp from the dye, but you can see how light it dried, or is drying. But while it's still a little damp, we're going to do one more step, which is we're going to put the ring on. So the reason why it's good that it's still a little damp is that this tool works better when it's a little bit damp. And we're just going to fold over the leather, and this is going to punch a hole in it. Make sure it's more or less centered, and then through with the hole. So now we've got that hole there and a little bit of a hole there, which is exactly what we need. Next thing is getting a brad or a snap to put the two pieces together. So this is a set of assorted snaps, or rivets, I guess is a better word for it. So this is a set of assorted rivets. I'm going to find two nice large ones because it's a pretty hefty piece. There we go. And this is what's going to press it on. So first thing we're going to do is put a ring in. So for this I'm going to put D-rings in so I can put it on a carabiner? I've never said that word out loud before. So just going to put a nice size D-ring on it. So the first thing we got to do is feed the snap through onto the other side. We're going to put the other snap on that side. And then this little cup is going to sit on top of the anvil here. And then this tool is specifically meant to drive that down. So now we've got everything set, and then we're going to tap it in. And there we go. Nice, tight ring. So now we're just going to let it finish drying. And we'll see what the final product looks like. And that's it. It's all dried. You know what? I'm pretty happy with how this worked out. Now, again, this is just to show how easy it is to start working with leather. And if anybody watching this is an experienced leather worker and has some tips, please leave your nicely worded comments below. But I'm really happy with how this turned out. It's a very easy project, and really it's just a gateway to a much larger world of working with leather. So thank you guys for watching, and make sure you hit subscribe.